Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are going to preview the 2025 San Francisco 49ers training camp for you. Going to dive into some wide receiver drama, some of the training camp battles, and maybe even get into some predictions for this year's training camp sessions. They start on Wednesday, July 23rd, and lead all the way into week one of the NFL preseason. So let's dive into the show today. But first, don't forget to like, share, subscribe on the audio podcasting platforms. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And let me just say this, folks. San Francisco 49ers football is back this week, the best time of the year. You can say it's Christmas. You can say it's the holiday season. And I say, nah. It is the kickoff to each and every new NFL season. I'm so happy it's back. I'm sure you are as well. And let's start off the conversation by diving into what I think has become, after a very quiet offseason for the San Francisco 49ers, an unfortunate kind of sidebar, if you will, because the contractual drama has once again reared its ugly head for San Francisco. They re-signed Brock Purdy and Fred Warner and George Kittle, and all felt right in the world. It all felt like, we have got this thing in the bag. There's nothing else to worry about. And then Jauan Jennings said, pay me or trade me. And we all said, damn it, why can't we have just one pleasant, quiet offseason? And I want to start off by saying this, that Jauan Jennings, as of the recording of this podcast on July 20th, has not officially requested a trade. And the fact is, he said, or at least via Adam Schefter through his own agents and his own people, if you will, that if I don't get paid by training camp, then I may ask for a trade. But you can clearly see that this was coming for a while. Not in a sense of I knew it was going to happen this way, but if the reports are true from Schefter and others that Jauan Jennings had made it known to San Francisco, John and Kyle Shanahan, that he wanted the new contract, and San Francisco, doing what they always do, waited things out, didn't really act quickly to get things done. And in Jauan Jennings' case, he's not Brock, he's not Fred, he's not George Kittle. I can see them wanting to wait things out and kind of say, yeah, Jauan has some leverage, but so do we. We can afford to wait this thing out because Jauan doesn't give us the Ayuk vibes or the Nick Bosa vibes of a holdout or a hold-in. Jauan, 7th-round pick, worked his way up to being an almost Super Bowl MVP caliber player. And for Jauan in his camp, they're saying, look, you almost had 1,000 yards last year, would have had 1,000 yards last year, was by far this team's best receiver, not named George Kittle. And we want to get paid. He's around 27, 28 years old. This could be his, only big contract of his career. So why not maximize it now and use the amount of leverage you currently have to maybe afford you a double-digit $1 million contract. All that makes sense. All it aligns. But San Francisco's known about this for a while. And I will firmly plant my flag in the camp that states Jauan Jennings is going to get paid. I don't think he'll get paid $30 million a year, as he shouldn't, but I do think Jauan Jennings is well worth the money for San Francisco. Let's say it's around $12 to $15 million per year, and that'll be on the AAV side, so not exactly that figure, but if Jauan Jennings, say, is making 3 years, $36 million, by the time his deal's done, he's 31 years old. That is, I think, a really good sign and a really good deal for San Francisco. I also am of the mindset that if you take what was said over and over and over again of San Francisco not being happy or content with how things went during the Ayuk negotiation period and them being open to trading him, albeit not shopping him, that if you re-sign Jauan Jennings, it all but gives you more motivation to move off of Ayuk's contract in 1 year's time before it really explodes into massive cap figures you really don't want to see. I think we all believe here on the show and outside in the fan base that this is probably going to be Ayuk's last year. He comes back, he gets healthy, regains his footing, proves he's healthy to other teams out there that may want his services. Obviously, you look towards the Patriots and Commanders, but nonetheless, this is probably Ayuk's last year on the team. I think San Francisco's hoping that they have Ricky Pearsall who can ascend and take Ayuk's job in or at the end of this year, if not this year alone. Then you have Jauan, who I think they want to keep around for a while. And if you can say trade Ayuk and have Jauan, and you have Pearsall making, I don't know, $5, $6, $7 million per year, and Jauan making roughly 12, and Demarcus Robinson making around, I think, 7 or 8, like that's a pretty cheap receiver core, and for a team that is going to pay Brock Purdy big money or already has, but his cap will grow immensely the next couple of years or so. And then you have Nick Bosa and Trent Williams and guys, cap hits are only going to get bigger. It's a pretty good time to move off Ayuk by in a weird way by paying Jauan Jennings a year ahead of time, if you will. So I think he gets paid. I don't think it's worth. I don't think Jauan's holding out. I don't think he's making this a big stink. Jauan has never given me that vibe. Jauan just feels like a team player with the way he plays the game itself, and I think the way he carries himself, it's much more team-centric than, say, Ayuk or Deebo Samuel for that matter. I don't think Jauan's a diva. I don't think Jauan blindsided San Francisco by any means. It is feels blindsiding from the fan base because we're like, where'd this come from? But if you read the reports, it seems pretty obvious that both sides have been at least discussing or at least knowing that Jauan wanted to get paid, and he's made that known to the team. And that's really all that's important. And I think San Francisco realizes that, look, Jauan, yes, has some leverage over us with Ayuk being injured and Pearsall being injured, but the severity of that doesn't seem too big. Get to that in a second here. Demarcus Robinson is probably going to get suspended for 1 to 3 games. So Jauan could say, you're not going to have, 2 of your top 3 guys, 2 of your top 4 guys, pay me now so you don't lose 3 of your top 4 guys before the year starts. But they could also tell Jauan, hey, buddy old pal, Third and Jauan, love that name, by the way. We dare you to hold out. You're going to get fined. You're going to lose money. But I do think the sticking point and the reason why Jauan, outside of the years of financial stability, really comes down to guaranteed money. If you look at, which has kind of caused a big problem this year for every team in the NFL, is second-round picks not signing their contracts because Jaden Higgins of the Houston Texans signed that fully guaranteed deal. And right now, Jauan is making under the guaranteed money that Jaden Higgins is making. Now, Jaden Higgins has not played a single snap at the NFL, and although I think he'll be a tremendous player, Jauan has proven to be a solid NFL player. He's been able to have a 3 to 4 year career. He has ascended to being one of the most underrated players, and I think is becoming kind of one of the more just underrated guys that everyone looks to and says, that guy deserves more love in the NFL. He does so much for this offense. He fits what Shanahan wants to a T, and you can kind of put a lot of the same characteristics on Jauan that you can Ayuk, in the same way of Ayuk's a great separator, beats man coverage, great scheme fit. Jauan, albeit isn't a great man coverage beater, he's a big body guy, he's a great run blocker, fits that big slot receiver Kyle Shanahan likes. It just seems like he fits this offense. And when you trade away Deebo Samuel and you don't really know what you have in Cowling and Pearsall, and you draft Jordan Watkins, but he's a rookie, so you really don't know what you have there, paying Jauan just kind of feels like a no-brainer in my opinion. And I don't want to fall into the same trap I did with Ayuk because, one, no one thought Ayuk would get hurt. That needs to be stated. But I do think that there is a much clearer cap to Ayuk's career than Jauan Jennings. I think Ayuk is that separator, quick cuts, beats man coverage, and when Ayuk gets older, even before the injury, once he slows down, the cuts aren't going to be as quick, the smoothness won't be there. You can clearly see a player that has the archetype and the strengths and skill set of Brandon Ayuk. There's a clear end of career for him. Whereas Jauan, the way he plays, he's not really fast guy. He's not someone that is great against man coverage. He's a go up and get it physical player. And there are certainly, like Deebo Samuel in his case, you hit a wall. But I think Jauan doesn't play as physical, or it's a different version of physicality than Deebo Samuel, where he isn't running into, linebackers and safeties, full speed and lowering his helmet and, putting his body in danger. Jauan, although is physical, it's different. It's more of a physicality and blocking, nickelbacks and cornerbacks and safeties, where I do think Jauan can survive a lot longer than Deebo and a lot longer than Brandon Ayuk. And I really wouldn't be shocked if, although maybe this is because of Ayuk's injury, we look back in 5 to 8 years and say, how did Jauan Jennings may not have the numbers of Ayuk and Deebo in totality or had the peak, but like overall, how did of those guys, how was he the one to have a 10-year plus career? He just kind of screams like the 10-year vet that's gritty and he puts his nose in the dirt and just gets the job done for any team he plays for. And I'm hoping and I'm thinking that that'll be for the San Francisco 49ers for a long time. But I want to move on from Jauan Jennings. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think the drama is existent with him. But I do think that for a lot of us, when we got the PUP list and the NI or the NFI list revealed to us, and there was Ben Barch and George Odom, who got cut recently, which doesn't shock me. This team had like 7 safeties. Someone had to go. Odom was never going to start for this team. He really wasn't the special teams player they wanted him to be when Brant Boyer in there. Made sense, but I digress. You saw Ben Barch injured, away from the facility injury. Ayuk's on there, which makes sense. He's probably not going to be ready, by or till November. I've always said that. But then you found Ricky Pearsall on there. And a lot of us, including myself, were like, wait a minute. Didn't Kyle Shanahan tell us that Pearsall should be good to go by day one of training camp? And my initial thought was like, this could be a very small thing and it could be nothing. But if it is something big and it is a concern and Pearsall has re-injured the hamstring or there is a setback, then that's a problem. And there is a real concern for the receiver room when you don't have Ayuk and you don't have Robinson, assumedly, for the first couple of games of the season due to the DUI suspension. Now you may not have Pearsall, then Jennings wants a new contract. Like, it just creates a big kind of, tornado of chaos in one positional group. And it's like, whoa, like, pause, wait a minute here. And so that was my initial response. But when I sat with it for a second and more news came out, Pearsall and anybody else on the PUP list can be activated at any point in time. There is no time constraint on a training camp placement on the PUP list. Now, if they're placed on it once the week 1 of the regular season comes, then there is an actual, you have to be on it for, I think it's 4 weeks, maybe it's 6 weeks. But nonetheless, Pearsall can be activated today. He can be activated tomorrow morning. He can be activated the day of week 1 of media and fan available training camp days. So I think we should pause the brakes on being overly alarmed or overly, I don't want to say concerned, but just leery of Pearsall having an injury. And I've seen people on Twitter and social media calling him a bust. That to me is asinine. I think he went through so many things that weren't his fault last year, mainly being shot in the chest. That was the only reason as to why he actually missed some time during the regular season. He missed some training camp last year due to a hamstring problem and a shoulder issue, but that wasn't an issue during the season. So, and then even when Pearsall played, he was a really good player at the end of the year and showed some real signs of finally finding his footing in the NFL. So I don't think it's a concern yet. It may become one if he isn't healthy and active for day 1 or the first week of training camp and he's missing preseason games. But let's pump the brakes on Pearsall as a bust because that just feels like it feels like a certain group of people's reaction that sometimes are right, but a lot of times are just doing it for the wrong reasons. And, I get it. Maybe you didn't like the pick. I just feels like there's ulterior motives behind calling Pearsall a bust. Like, I was having a conversation with somebody who I don't even know their name. And they were just like, oh, he's a bust. And I was like, well, why? Like, explain to me why you believe he's a bust when he played relatively well to end the year, showed some good signs, and didn't miss time. But then it became an overall like, well, Jennings, maybe once out and Ayuk's hurt and Robinson's hurt. It's like, okay, don't let the other chaos in the room affect your thoughts on one player. like we've heard some Nick Bosa's overrated conversations creeping up and being a real thing in the fan base, which at some point do have validity, but don't let the chaos and the real just crappy year of Nick Sorensen being a DC and having no defensive linemen last year, like taint your experience or your feelings towards Nick Bosa, who has been one of the best edge rushers in the entire league since 2019. He isn't the best, but he's one of the best. But I think this fan base had such a quiet offseason where it was like, oh, we can unplug. I literally unplugged. Like we hadn't had a show in 2 or 3 weeks because it was like nothing's happening. I'm not going to fabricate things and just make things up. I'm not going to hype up, freaking Isaiah Nayor or some random cornerback in the roster and say, this guy's going to be the next, Lenore. Or like, I'm not going to do that. I think that's boring and just, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'd be betraying myself doing that. But when you get the big kind of one day of like, bang, Jauan wants out. Bang, Ayuk is hurt. Bang, Pearsall's injured. Bang, pup list. Bang, Ben Barch is hurt. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, where did this all come from? And why is it happening right now? And why is it on one day? And it can be a lot to kind of take in. But I do think that the Niners really aren't concerned at Pearsall. I think they're happy with the receiver room. I think they're happy with where things are at. I don't think they are worried about Pearsall's hamstring or, I'd be more concerned about Robinson's suspension than Pearsall being healthy by week 1 is how I put that. Which the Robinson suspension feels like it's almost a guarantee at this point, which we all kind of assumed it would be, but the NFL has really been dragging their feet. And I don't know why. I don't understand why it takes them a year and a half. In this case for Robinson takes, I don't know, what has it been? 9 months to get things done. In an external or internal investigation on a DUI really shouldn't take this long. It's as simple as, what did the previous guy get for the same thing? Yeah, give that guy this. It's really like similar stuff, unless there's more to it than we don't know. But if it's 1 game, 3 games, whatever, but I'd be much more concerned about, Robinson missing the first 3 games of the season due to suspension than Pearsall being injured. But if you want to be devil's advocate here, if Pearsall is hurt, then that gives Jennings even more, more ammunition to say, hey, you want your number 1 guy? Pay me. You want to win now? Pay me. You paid Brock. You paid Fred. You paid Kittle. Oh, what next? So I don't know. It just, maybe it's the optimist in me, which rarely ever comes out. And really, maybe it is the good vibe off season of like, okay, like this has been a rather uneventful last, I don't know, 6 months or so for San Francisco, and it feels good and feels nice to have it happen for once in the last 4 or 5 years. But I don't think any of the news that we got, like, I'm not looking at this being like, oh my God, Pearsall's out and Ayuk's hurt. Like, okay, like let's take things in stride. And I don't. I am not concerned or sitting back like, oh, how's this going to go? But with that said, I do want to pause for 1 second to remind you, if you want to go see your San Francisco 49ers play this season, I need you to go to SeatGeek.com. Find your tickets. They have a great seating chart there. Green means good, red means bad. Find tickets that you like. And when you go to checkout, use promo code 49ERSAccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com. And you can save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And I'll tell you this, I spent the last 2 weeks in Northern California with my family. The weather's nice. It was windy, a little chilly. Sun was out. You want to get to Northern California in September, in August, in October. When the holiday months come around, I'll tell you what, Northern California is a great place to be. Training camps coming up. You want tickets? SeatGeek.com. Probably already sold out now, but you missed your chance. But don't miss your chance on getting Niner tickets by using that promo code 49ers Access for $20 off your first purchase. And now I want to dive into some of my training camp I don't want to use the term predictions, but I do want to point out some camp battles I really am looking forward to listening and watching and seeing in the next few weeks or so. Hopefully, during preseason, we get a good look on certain things and can tell, who looks good, who looks bad, and kind of get a better idea as to where this team is going to put their efforts and where their big decisions may lead them. I, for one, am going to have my eyes glued to that safety room. And really, you can kind of put the entire secondary in this of like Mustafa's going to be out. Jair Brown, thankfully, was not on the pup list. So that's a good sign for him after his ankle surgery. But who was going to be the other or the two starting safeties where Jair Brown's job may not be entirely safe, although I'm pretty sure he'll be the starter. But is that going to be Pinnock's job? Is that going to be, Marquis Siegel's job? Is that going to be Richie Grant's job or somebody else in that room who kind of stands above the rest and kind of solidifies himself as the other guy opposite Brown while Mustafa's out? But the other, real competition I want to see is that cornerback room. Who is the nickelback going to be this year? San Francisco wants to keep Lenore on the outside. So if that's the case, is Upton Stout, a rookie, going to find himself starting games for San Francisco if he beats out Trey Brown during training camp? Are they going to want to have Renardo Green take nickelback snaps? I would assume that's not the case. I'd refrain from doing so. We've already seen Trey Brown have a pretty good OTA session, albeit again, it's OTAs and minicamps. What does it mean? I don't know. I wouldn't put too much into any of those sessions, and I really wouldn't put too much into training camp until the pads come on. Anyways, but I think cornerback 3 is one of the most pivotal spots on the roster for this defense. Nickelback has always been one of the most important pieces in this wide 9 defense, going back to K'Wan Williams. And it's a reason why they moved Jimmy Ward to play nickelback when it was Demeco Ryans as the DC and Steve Wilkes there. So, there's a lot of reasons to believe and a lot of reasons to point to nickelback being a primary place to want to see a camp battle and who you think will win that. Upton Stout, maybe it is Marquis Siegel who moves from safety to nickelback. Who knows how they want to utilize him this year, or Trey Brown. My assumption is we're probably going to have about 5 or 6 cornerbacks make the roster. Lenore, Trey Brown, Renardo Green, Upton Stout. You're going to have your Darrell Luter Jr.'s, your Siren Neals in there. I'm probably forgetting somebody else too, but it really does feel like there isn't much room to maneuver in the cornerback room, but I think cornerback 3 is like the big pivotal place to watch for in training camp and the preseason. Moving along, I don't think there's much to debate on the defensive line in regards to camp battles. I think it's pretty cut and dry as to who's making the team. I don't think San Francisco, knowing how bare bones they were coming into the year, can afford to just start cutting players that maybe you're highly paid or have higher upside. Like I see a lot of people saying, cut Yetur Gross Matos. I don't see that being the case. I don't see San Francisco wanting to do that, but I do think one of the bigger camp battles on defense is the linebacker 2 spot. I think D. Winters wins that job. I've been pretty adamant about that the entire offseason. But I do think that D. Winters and Nicholas Martin are going to be vying for that job. I'm also going to have my eyes keened in on Curtis Robinson and his knee. He's on the pup list, I believe, still, but I am really eager to watch him play again. He probably would have been a starter last year had it not been for the torn ACL, which would have saved us from the disaster of Javon J. Campbell. That said, I think the D. Winters, Nicholas Martin competition will be very fun to watch. I hope Winters can stay healthy for the entire year, or at least for the entire training camp and preseason, to give us that camp battle we deserve to see and the team deserves to have. But I think those 2 guys are going to lock horns, and I think it's going to be a tooth and nail battle for the linebacker 2 job. But I do think ultimately Winters wins it. However, it's not like it is already locked up. There's a lot of room to maneuver. That room is wide open. I think there's a reason why Nicholas Martin went so high in the draft, maybe overdrafted. And there's a reason as to why I think a lot of people want to see D. Winters finally get that linebacker 2 job all to himself. There's high upside there for both players, and I am very eager to watch those 2 things play out. If anything, those 3 guys really should be the top 3 either way. Martin, Winters, and of course, Fred Warner at the top of that list. Moving over to the offense, you can maybe have a conversation about receiver. I think that competition, like on paper, without Ayuk, being on the field due to his injury, you're looking at, Ricky Pearsall being the one or the two, him and Jennings go back and forth. Um, let's assume Demarcus Robinson is receiver 3 in the meantime, before getting popped for suspension. So really, you're looking at who's receiver 4, and then eventually becomes receiver 3 once Robinson is ruled out due to the DUI. That is when you look towards players like Jacob Cowing and Isaiah Hodgins, who I think may surprise some people. He's from Walnut Creek. I went to high school with him, funny enough. He's a big body guy. He had a really good stint with the New York Giants, and then just really couldn't find his footing again afterwards. Not sure why that is. But he's back home in the Bay for the first time since leaving for college at Oregon State full time. And I think that, coming back home, playing in his own backyard, I think will do him some good. That said, I think, you're looking at Cowing, and I really don't know what Jordan Watkins will provide for the roster. Shanahan is he just views receivers as like the plague of like, we're never going to play you, and I don't want to play you, especially if you're in like a day 2 pick or, late day 2 mainly, or early day 3. You just don't play your first year. And I don't think Jordan Watkins will change that this season for San Francisco, barring a massive injury plague that comes in. So I think the Cowing and the Jordan Watkins competition will be big. But I think really, like, you're going to have some surprise people. Tariq Owens, Isaiah Hodgins, like your first kind of 5 guys are set in stone, with that 6th roster spot that could easily become the 3rd or 4th if things go awry for this team, which if Jennings gets traded and Ayuk doesn't come back ever and Robinson's out, like the depth quickly becomes starters for you. And so my assumption is they're going to have a veteran, whether it is Hodgins or Russell Gage, actually make the roster to begin the season, because I know last year Ronnie Bell was taking snaps. And I think you're going to see somebody like that. I'm hoping it's Cowing. I'm hoping it is, somebody actually worth watching the upside of. But I wouldn't be shocked to see Kyle take a lower ceiling, higher floor player and let them play and start things, because I think that's what he likes to do. And I would just say, watch out when the receiver news comes out, who had a good day, who had a bad day, who was beating man coverage or press coverage when the pads come on. Like, I would not be shocked to watch somebody like Isaiah Hodgins have a really good camp and outduel somebody like Watkins and maybe even Jacob Cowing if things aren't great. And especially if Demarcus Robinson is popped for 3 games, they want that kind of backup, bigger body guy. And Isaiah Hodgins is a bigger body receiver that can, perform really well in the red zone. So just watch out for him. He isn't the biggest name. He isn't the star caliber player, but I think you're going to see one of those lower ceiling guys make the roster. And actually, if Ayuk is out and Robinson's gone for the first couple of games, actually, contribute early. Maybe not often, but early for the San Francisco 49ers. So my eyes are on the receiver room. I don't think there's too much to make from the running back room. I guess you can say Corey Kiner and Patrick Taylor vying for the running back 4 job. Everything else kind of seems set in stone there. Obviously, quarterback is clearly locked and loaded. It's Purdy and Jones, and maybe you can talk me into a Curtis Workton or Mordecai competition, but I could really just care less. None of those guys move the needle for me. I don't even like the Curtis Work pick, but I digress. I will say this, though, that the Niners are in a place where they, I think, have 89 guys on the roster right now, so they can sign somebody. A lot of people, going back to the receiver room, have been like saying, go get Amari Cooper, go get Keenan Allen. I don't think that's going to happen for San Francisco. I don't see them signing a veteran player this early in training camp. Maybe if somebody else goes down or somebody else has an issue where they trade Jauan Jennings, albeit unlikely. Maybe that's the case, but my sticking point in the reasoning why I don't believe that happens is because what happens when Ayuk comes back and Robinson comes back? Okay, so let's say you sign Amari Cooper, for example. Sign Amari Cooper, you walk into the year, Let's say Jennings gets traded for whatever reason. You have Pearsall, you have Cooper, you have Cowing and the other guys below them. Okay. Robinson's back. Okay. Robinson, clearly you liked more than Amari Cooper to begin the year or during free agency. So you're going to play Robinson over Amari Cooper most likely, right? Then Ayuk comes back. So then Cooper falls from your number 2 guy, number 3 guy to like number 6 on your roster. Maybe you can say, well, Sterling, who cares? It's talent. Accumulate it in any way you can. And I get it. Okay, fine. But is Cooper want to do that? Would Keenan Allen agree to being a receiver 2 or 3 on day 1 and receiver 6 by week 10? I don't think so. So those I think are guys that'll sign late in the year, middle of the year when teams see a guy go down with injury, and teams get desperate. The Ravens always do this. The Buccaneers always do that. I would not be shocked to watch Keenan Allen go back to the Chargers. Mike Williams is retired. So I think San Francisco will stand pat. That said, I do think one really important group that no one's really talking about is the guard room. And I think a lot of it is because of Ben Barch's injury. Now, I don't know what it is. Could be serious, could be minimal. I have no idea. But Ben Barch is never healthy. Now, even last year, when he played really well in a couple of games, he ended the year on injured reserve. He's yet to play a single full season and play every single game. And I get San Francisco wanting to give him a shot. The archetype for what Shanahan likes in his guards is certainly there. I think Ben Barch fits the offense extremely well. That said, he's already hurt. And when you walk into the year having not really addressed the offensive line, you have Trent, you have Ben Barch, you have Jake Brendel, you have Dominic Pooney and McKivitz, and your only draft pick was Connor Colby, and you didn't sign anybody else with a big name or caliber in free agency, which, okay, that's fine, but the expectation was, okay, if you're not going to sign somebody, you're going to draft somebody, and waiting until round 7 really doesn't instill hope that that guy's going to be something. San Francisco has a lot of unknown depth. Matt Hennessy, Nick Zakelj is known enough, but doesn't move the needle. Drake Nugent can play center. Maybe that gives you more versatility to move guys around. Spencer Burford can play guard, but I'm not sure they want to do that. Knowing Jalen Moore is gone, they want to have a bona fide left tackle. Andre Dillard, who, again, is also hurt himself. Don't know how serious it is, but I don't think he practiced a single day during minicamp or training camp. So he'll be your right tackle, maybe. There just really isn't much room to falter in the guard room. And with Ben Barch already hurt, it doesn't give me much hope or promise that if somebody goes down, we're going to be okay. That Brock Purdy's not going to be running for his life. I know San Francisco has said in the previous years, Chris Forrester, the offensive line coach, said, pay guys that actually touch the football. Unfortunately, you can do that, but if you can't get the ball to those guys because you don't pay the offensive line or dress the offensive line, well, then it's not worth the money. Then you get into conversations of, we're overpaying this guy and that guy. Well, the offensive line can't hold up, so we can even get the ball to said receiver or running back or whatnot. So it's upsetting. I think San Francisco really is on the verge in an odd way. I think they're more prepared and they are more capable of being better and surviving than, say, the Bengals are, who really never address the offensive line, never really protect Joe Burrow, but are often in these 45 to 46 point shootouts and are fringe playoff teams. I think San Francisco is better prepared than the Bengals are, better coached, have better players. That said, I think they are much closer to the Bengals, 8-9, 9-8, vying for a wild card than they are, 13-3, 13-4, 12-5. I know San Francisco's schedule may not dictate that entirely, but I do think that if things go wrong, if someone goes down, San Francisco is not in a good place to survive any injury on the offensive line maybe outside of Jake Brendel, but that's a whole different story for a different day. But outside of that, you can get into the Jake Moody competition, but I think, cornerback 3, linebacker 2, the guard position, mainly left guard, and kind of that receiver 4 or 5 or kind of the big ones you look to. I think punters all kind of locked in. Kicker again is kind of the other big one, but other than that, there really isn't like for as for as many questions as San Francisco has, they don't really have any big competitions of like, oh, if that guy doesn't play well or that, if that, position doesn't work out, their season's over with, which is a kind of a good place to be in for as many young players as they have. But, edge rusher and defensive tackle, like there's no competitions there, in my opinion. Um, I think it's pretty obvious how things will work itself out once the year comes along. But the competitions they do have on paper, I think, are pretty interesting. I don't think you're seeing big names like if Upton Stout wins the job, I'm not going to say, oh, wow, that's a big thing. I'm like, oh yeah, like good. It's not a big deal though, but it's like okay, like cool. I'm happy you did. You beat the veteran who they signed this offseason. Yippee. But I am so happy football's back. I'm so happy that we can finally get back to content and podcasts and talking about the San Francisco 49ers. I know a lot of you out there have been anxiously waiting for shows to come back, and I have too. There's been so much going on. Um, Superman came out. It was a fun movie. I'm not sure how many of you liked it out there, but this has been one of the most uneventful off seasons of the last 5 years or so since I've been covering the team. But to have that and then hopefully go into a really good season of San Francisco 49er football, I think is really important. The Niners are in a good place. And I think that, without repeating myself over and over again, I think that San Francisco has put themselves in a place to be really successful this season and it not hinge on who wins a training camp battle, which I think is a good place to be. Obviously, once the year comes, that may change, and I can look back and say, "Oh my God, they need this and that," and they clearly have holes still they have to fill. But I am again oddly optimistic about this roster. It's young, it's unproven, but I'm very excited to see what they can do in 2025. That said, it's all I have for you today. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday morning for yourselves. I had a great weekend. Hope you did too. Hope you enjoyed the off season because it is over. Stay tuned later this week for my 5 bold training camp predictions. That'll drop either Wednesday morning or it'll be live on Tuesday night. So stay tuned for that because the content is back. It ramps back up this week because San Francisco starts training camp on Wednesday, July 23rd, and runs all the way to week 1 of the NFL preseason, about 2-ish weeks away. And I cannot wait to see the red and gold back on the football field once again. Don't forget to go get your tickets to see your San Francisco 49ers this year at SeatGeek.com and use that promo code 49ers Access to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. You can also follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the extra Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. I'm also going to put my link to my Substack down below, just kicking things off there with some articles. You're going to see more a written form or my written opinion on things rather than a podcast or a video on things. So go there and subscribe if you can. I really appreciate it. Leave a like. Don't forget to share and subscribe to the show and leave the 5-star audio podcasting review. And until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett. Football's back, baby. Football is back. And until next time, stay faithful.